Now, Brad, over the weekend, got this list that you put together of the
I
top
did.
10 most hated teams. Now, let's preface this now. This is not your personally top 10 most hated list. This is a top 10 most hated list of all time. Now, what went into this, and how did you compile all this information?
Yeah, good to see you guys, Smoke and Tom. All of these most hated teams in this top 10 to me had two extremely important factors. That was all of them were winners, and they had a featured player or a group of players that was just arrogant enough to be hated or at least gave off those vibes to a national audience. I mean, 1986 Miami, look, that was 1 year before I was born, okay? But that sort of birthed what the U was as a blue blood. I mean, Michael Irvin, those guys getting off the plane in the fatigues, blowing out Notre Dame in the convict versus Catholics game, losing that championship game too when Testaverde had 5 picks. But with Jimmy Johnson, I think number one to me was an easy choice, but the rest of that top 10 was a bit more difficult.
Smoke, I want to ask you a question, man. What stands out when we look at this entire list and we look at 1 through 10? Obviously, Brad mentioned 86 Miami being at the top of the list, but what jumps out at you when you look at this 1 through 10?
Yeah, what jumps out at me is quarterback play. When you look at the number 4 on there, Auburn, and you go down and you get to Johnny Manziel, then even at the top with my man Jameis Winston. Like, everyone hates to hate a good quarterback, and you have to have someone on your team that can provide that type of play that you can't get from anywhere else. That typically makes most people dislike them.
Yeah, I mean, you see all the Heisman winners, man. Like you said, Johnny Football, Cam Newton had that whole saga with his father and how much money they accepted going to Auburn. That was kind of a reason.
Allegedly.
Cam. Yeah, allegedly. Baker Mayfield planting the flag. Remember that? I mean, beating Ohio State and then doing that. That was a arrogant move. Tim Tebow in Florida '08 was sort of a tough choice for me. Tebow had millions of fans around the country, but those who did not like Florida and the SEC, especially Nick Saban in Alabama, they just had this disdain for Tim Tebow. He had the whole, blood-soaked jersey game at Florida State. He had the guarantee after they lost to Ole Miss in the swamp. So 2008, Florida just made the list number 10. That was my toughest inclusion.
Brad, here's the only thing about Tebow and that Florida team. Like, I think they were loved. I think everyone loves a great story of Tebow. If you hate Tebow, that's your fault. The guy plays with blood on him. He wasn't that good of a thrower of the football. He had a great team around him. He wasn't like the guy that got pushed off of his team, Cam Newton, allegedly for stolen items. Now, when you look at it, it's like, do you really hate that Florida team, or you just dislike the fact that Urban Meyer was on that team? He was the head coach of that team, and he had a bunch of really good players. But it wasn't like one guy that I truly just hated. Like, we hated Cam Newton at Auburn or disliked Johnny Manziel because he was running around and making life tough for everybody in Tuscaloosa and SEC. Or Baker playing with the arrogance of just saying, you know what? I don't care what happens. I'm going to be one of the first players to plant this flag on your field because I just dominated you in this game.
Yeah, you bring up great points about Urban Meyer. I mean, he's a reason a lot of fans did not like Florida. I was kind of covering SEC football as a rookie reporter at the time, and Florida was just taking the SEC by storm. We were seeing offensive tempo that we had never seen before in the SEC. They were still predicated by defense, but with Percy Harvin and Tim Tebow and some of those first-round picks they had on both sides of the ball, man, Florida was just dominating the competition. And we know Urban Meyer Smoke late in games was kind of stat padding for Tim Tebow, trying to get him that Heisman Trophy. So there were reasons the Gators were hated.
Yeah, I feel like that's what's wild. Like, this is really a list of it's almost like people find a single player. You look at Jameis Winston, and it's like he's the most hated player, so we're just going to hate the entire team. What I found funny when kind of looking at this list, and you look at Jameis Winston, what I think is so impressive is that he went from being this hated guy all across college football to going into the NFL, and he is not only a fan favorite, he's doing the media rounds when it comes around the draft and the combine, but he is absolutely one of the most well-liked locker room guys, and I'm sure that's how he was in Tallahassee, but I just find it so amusing that he went from hated to so well-liked.
Yeah, it all started with the crab legs and the 29 game winning streak, and in Tallahassee. And y'all remember that last year, the year after he won the Heisman, where they got back to that playoff and got blown out by Oregon. I mean, he had like 15 or 18 picks that year, and they had to come back in the ACC in several games. So Florida State wasn't as elite as they were the previous season, but they still, made it far in the playoff. And when Oregon did beat Florida State, I remember that kind of being the, aha moment of Twitter and social media, where just the memes were just crazy dealing with Jameis Winston.
Yeah, with all the crab legs, all the memes, showing up at the game when he wasn't supposed to play, warming up with the team, and then Jimbo having to put him back in the locker room. That was awkward. But you know what, fellas? When we interviewed players from that team, we drafted Ronald Darby. Nick O'Leary was on that team. Not one, Carlos Williams, we drafted Carlos as well too. Not one of those players said anything negative about J-Bo. They all loved him in terms of his ability to lead, bring production, and win games. And I think the reason why everyone outside of that locker room and in Tallahassee disliked him is just because of what we were thinking about. How is this kid getting away with all that stuff? But I'm here to tell you, when you win and you're the best player on the team, you get away with a ton of things.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, everybody loved him in Tallahassee. Maybe outside, the perception, I can still picture Jimbo Fisher, hands on his hips, looking up the scoreboard like, what are you doing out here when I told you not to dress? But still one of the funnier moments. We could bring that list up one more time. I would love to see it because, Smoke, I got to ask. Obviously, we got Brad's take for number one, but what's your take? Who would you have as number one on this entire list?
2010 Auburn, for the simple fact that the greatest football player in college football history was on there. Allegedly, they said he got paid to go to school there. We don't know if that's true or not. But what he did that year in the SEC of totally just wrecking it, game after game after game, and he did it with a smile. Even though everyone wanted him out of there and run him off and he shouldn't be playing because he cheated, accepted money, not one time did you not see a smile on Cam's face, and not one time did you see a team take him down.
And he did it with a bunch of like ragtag guys around him. I mean, this team wasn't filled with All-Americans the way some of these now championship teams now are. I mean, they had Nick Fairley. He was pretty dang good.
That's it, Brad. Brad,
right.
Brad, not to cut you off, but it was Cam on offense,
right,
Nick on defense, and whoever was the coach, just listen, just relax, accept this extension check that's coming to you and the millions that I'm going to make you, and then we're going to move on. But go ahead.
So I actually attended the game against South Carolina at Jordan-Hare that season. That was the birth of Cam Newton, man. He had a 50-yard touchdown run, I think early in the second half of that game, where he kind of dove over the pile and did the Superman. And like that was it, man. The Gamecocks had the lead late in that game, and Cam had so many memorable fourth quarter comebacks. Had the game against LSU where Auburn scored like 63 points and he had 500 yards total offense. There was a reason Cam was hated. He had the beautiful smile after every touchdown he would score and just kind of rip the Superman. So, and then the eventual number one pick. So he literally checked every box.
I'm just happy. I'm just happy that you did not mention that comeback in Tuscaloosa, being down by 20-something points. I'm just happy you didn't bring that one.
3-touchdown comeback, and then he blew out South Carolina again in Atlanta for an SC title.
Well, this is what's wild now, and I know you guys aren't really on the 7-on-7 circuit, but for as much love or hate that you have for Cam Newton, his players love him for running a 7-on-7 team, but man, the opposing teams, the fans, they chirp. Obviously, we've seen the off-field stuff where he likes to get in arguments and fights at 7-on-7s, but it's just kind of funny how it's all come full circle with Cam Newton. But Brad, I want to ask you, who just missed the cut? I mean, obviously we have your top 10 list, but there had to be one or two you kind of touching base on that may have made this list.
Yeah, two teams for me, and it was sort of recently. 2023 Michigan going 15-0, Jim Harbaugh. Now we know that the NCAA investigation cloud dealing with the whole Connor Stallion stuff. Did they cheat? Did they not cheat? How much of, various opposing game plans did they have? But one note there is Michigan didn't really have a hated player. And you either like Jim Harbaugh wearing the khakis or you hated Jim Harbaugh wearing the khakis. He just is what he is. And then the second team was 2011 Alabama. I did not have one of Nick Saban's teams in this top 10. But I do think if there was a Saban coach Bama team that was hated, it was 2011 because that's the same squad that lost 9-6 in that classic defensive battle against LSU. And then they blew out LSU in New Orleans, and that kind of started the whole SEC bias. We get to see a rematch in the final. So being an SEC guy at heart, I think 2011 Alabama would be my most hated Crimson Tide team.
Brad, and if I had one, I would just say last year's Ohio State National Championship team. And the reason why I say that is because this is the first time that we can go on and say it was truly pay for play. They went out and got the best players that money could buy, and they won a national championship. Before, we've never seen this before. It was usually homegrown or that one player that came in, but they went down to Alabama, got the best defensive player on their team. They went out and got their quarterback and solidified a national championship.
And they went and got Ole Miss's second best offensive player in Quinshon Judkins, who wasn't even running back one last season. That was Travion Henderson. So you're right. I mean, they spent the $22 million or so for that payroll as well as they possibly could have.
Davison Igbinosun was also another guy that they got from Ole Miss as well too, to come up there and play the opposite cornerback. So yeah, they went out and spent the money the right way.
It's funny, we talked about all these hated players, but like with the last two that you guys mentioned, it was really Harbaugh at Michigan that everybody disliked, and it was Ryan Day at Ohio State. So it's kind of weird that for such a long time it was the hated players, but now it was the hated coaches. But Brad, one more before I let you go. Heading into 2025, let's look at this upcoming season. It's obviously looking ahead, but who do you have as a potential most hated team this year?
I'm going to go with LSU because if Brian Kelly makes the playoff, we're going to all hear about it in the media. He's going to say it after every game. I told you guys this was coming. He said last season after they won the Missouri game at the end of the year that I guarantee this team is going to be a playoff team next season. And what have they done? They got the top portal class. They went out and spent money that they did not have 2 years ago when they were doing this same thing. And they're bringing back Garrett Nussmeier, a guy I can consider as one of the SEC's top quarterbacks. So if LSU does make the playoff and Brian Kelly finally gets over the hill and wins the playoff game as a head coach, then we're going to hear about it.
So, Brad, again, is it the player that's hated, or we just can't stand the fact of BK actually winning a national championship at LSU? Because I don't see a group of players that I can say, you know what, I just like Garrett Nussmeier because he did it the right way. I think it's more of Brian Kelly being there, and some of us don't like him that well just because he ran out of a pretty good situation up there indeed with you, Tom. I apologize.
Yeah, I think for LSU, it would be Brian Kelly. If I had to single out a certain player, maybe it's Carson Beck for leaving Georgia, taking the cash and having a lovely time with his girlfriend in South Beach, and especially if Miami goes and wins the ACC and gets to the playoff like they could not do under Cam Ward.
Brad, we appreciate you as always. Always good to chat with you, my friend. And for everybody out there, obviously you can head over to 247sports.com and check out everything Brad wrote about his top 10. It's a full in-depth feature. And also you can grab one of our incredible offers and promos to check out all of our coverage from our experts that you can only get on 247sports.com.